Welcome. I'm Erica Malinowski, no W and no relation, co-president of Soma Action. And joining me later will be Valerie Ledlin, who is one of the co-chairs of our Democracy Action Committee. Soma Action is a grassroots organization dedicated to driving progressive change. And as part of that, we put out a voter guide for every election, interviewing and evaluating candidates about their support for the issues our committees are working on. Please note that the questions are restricted to areas where our committees are active, so there are some important issues we don't cover, and we hope that voters will seek out candidates and learn more. Today, we're joined by Dean Dafis, a candidate for New Jersey's 11th Congressional District. Dean Dafis, thank you for joining us.
It's my pleasure. Thank you for making this opportunity for all of us candidates.
Could you please introduce yourself and tell us why you're running for Congress?
That's a good place to start, Erica. Thank you. So, again, thank you for doing this and coordinating this so quickly in light of the very tight deadline of this special primary election on February 5th. I am Dean Dafis. My pronouns are he, him, his. I serve on the local governing body, the Township Committee here in Maplewood Township. I'm serving out my third term, so it's been nearly 8 years of serving as a local councilman. I've also had the pleasure and honor of serving as mayor for a couple of those years. And you really learn how to govern, to take policy and ideas and translate it into action at the very local level. I also wear a couple of other hats. I'm an attorney by training. I work on housing policy and housing assistance for the state of New Jersey as the Director of Housing and Community Resources at one of our largest state agencies called the Department of Community Affairs, DCA. There, I work on social services support and affordable housing development and assistance for municipalities, all 564 municipalities throughout New Jersey. So I have really firsthand knowledge of federal policy and, in particular, of the federal programs that MAGA extremists and this administration in Washington is currently cutting, and the policy shifts that they're putting into place, which are really, really going to hurt us here in New Jersey. And hopefully, we'll get into some of that during the interview today. My candidate slogan is affordability, opportunity for all, and equality. My focus is on pro-democracy reforms to fight the MAGA agenda, protect and strengthen our democracy, and on being a fighter for working and middle class family affordability and opportunity. I want to carry on Mikey Sherrill's legacy of returning actual investments, real investments back into our communities throughout the 11th, and to really fight for bold, though necessary reforms that will expand opportunity and give us a better deal than the one that we're currently getting from Washington. I'm a progressive. I'm running on a progressive platform, and hopefully you'll get to hear a little bit about some of the things I want to go to Washington to do during our interview today. I'm really focused on creating opportunity for all through diverse stakeholder engagement, bipartisan outreach, and in partnership with community groups such as Soma Action, experts, and advocates. It's what I'm known for here in my local public service. My work reaches beyond, as I said, ideas and vision, transforming ideas into policy that improves quality of life. And I have experience doing this, as I said, as a public servant, as a community organizer, as a mayor, as a civil rights advocate and lawyer, and as a leader in state government, working across politics and home turf to make government better, to deliver results for working people. I grew up blue collar. I come from very modest beginnings. In an immigrant household, I'm the proud son of Greek immigrants who fled political turmoil and the kind of autocracy that we're seeing here in America right now, to seek opportunity and freedom. The American dream. They came here with hope in the American dream. I watched them struggle to make ends meet, to stand up for themselves, to climb the social and economic ladder, as all immigrants do. When they arrive here, too often my dad would come home late at night, broken, beaten up, not able to look us in the eye and assure us that everything is going to be okay, what every working parent hopes to convey and fulfill. My mom, who was a seamstress in a local factory, wouldn't get paid if she made a small little mistake on a pocket of a jacket. There were no union or other worker protections for her. Through grit and determination and lots of luck, they were able to make it and start their own business, a small business, community based, a diner that I grew up in, where I learned the value of hard work and the importance of community and service to community. Today, the American dream has fallen out of reach for far too many families, but I do believe that we can bring it back. But in order to bring it back, we need to send to Washington someone with lived experience in the struggle and the hustle of working and middle class families, someone like me. And I'm also running because I firmly believe, and I know Soma Action does too, that New Jersey's delegation should reflect the diversity and inclusion of our state. We have over 400,000 households that identify as LGBTQ households in New Jersey, and they too deserve a direct voice in Congress. We've never had an out open LGBTQ member of Congress from New Jersey. Especially right now, this is important. It's not just about checking a box. It's because the LGBTQ community is directly being targeted by this hateful, misanthropic administration. Protections we fought really hard for, that I fought really hard for as an advocate, an LGBTQ advocate, are being rolled back. And we're seeing the resurgence of awful, harmful practices from the past, like conversion therapy, which I'm a survivor of, which I would go to Washington and fight against and put into place a federal conversion therapy ban that would apply obviously across the country, not the patchwork of protections that we're seeing from state to state. So I would fight for the LGBTQ community, but as I said, for all of us, my lived experience professionally and personally really inspires my work, has inspired my public service. And that's really what's really fueling my run in this particular moment in time. And I think we have a unique opportunity to send to Washington new voices, real progressive voices with experience in turning policy into action, and not sending the same to Washington, the same operatives, the same wealthy people, or middle of the road Democrats. I mean, Democrats are excited. We saw that after this gubernatorial election. The results, not just here in New Jersey, but we've had Democratic pickups across the country where they were not expected. So we're fired up as Democrats. Let's make the best of this unique generational opportunity to send to Washington a real progressive and a real fighter for working and middle class families. And that's what my candidacy is about.
Thank you. I'm going to turn it over to Valerie to ask the first set of questions.
Thanks, Erica. So, Dean, you're running to be one of 435 voting members of one House of Congress. That's power, but it's limited. Realistically, what will you have the power to do as a U.S. representative, and what won't you have the power to do?
It's a very good question, Valerie, and good to see you. Thank you for being with us today and making the time. Well, the big part of the role is to use the office to really expand constituent services, right? Staying really connected to all 46 municipalities throughout the 11th to understand what the challenges are in each municipality and to be that voice for all of those municipalities at the federal level, right? That's what Mikey did really well in a bipartisan manner. And she went to Washington. She was a freshman, as I would be. I'm not a return Congress member, for instance. And she went to Washington during a Trump administration. 1.0 was not as bad as 2.0 is, but she was able across the aisle to find pragmatic and sensible solutions to the issues. And that's because she really used the constituent services part of the office very powerfully. So I would really focus on that. The other part of the role is legislation. There are some really good acts and bills that have been introduced I think we will have a Democratic majority after the midterms and in the Senate after that to allow us to overcome filibusters that killed some of these important progressive policies that really speak to affordability and opportunity for working and middle class families. So I would really use and I have experience as a legislator, as a lawyer. So I would really, really dig in and lean into that part of the office. But I also think that there's an opportunity to connect with all of our municipalities and use the office for advocacy in an appropriate manner, of course. Because I think that as a successful Congress member is one that is visible throughout their tenure, not just during election season. And it's great, actually, that you have to run for reelection pretty quickly after you've been elected on this 2-year cycle because it forces transparency and accountability. So I would use the town halls as an opportunity to remain very present in the community, to educate the community about the things and the challenges that I'm seeing in Washington, to return those back to the ground and to take the issues back with me to Washington, and also to use it as an opportunity to agitate, right? Like I would do town halls and invite some action and say, all right, let's go. Let's force these issues. Let's build our people power as we have done together on many, many occasions to fight MAGA extremism. And so that's what I see as our power. And I thank you for the question because you don't often get that question at all.
What skills does a congressperson need to be effective? And how have you demonstrated those skills?
Yeah, I mean, a lot of this is relationship building and coalition building. You really have to bring different stakeholders at the table. Some of those are advocates, some of them are experts. You really have to be informed by what's happening on the ground and who we have on the ground with that level of expertise. And it's really important to use that engagement to fuel advisory groups and working groups to build policy. Policy should not happen in closed conference rooms with just the policy wonks. Policy doesn't win elections on its own, and policy doesn't solve the kitchen sink issues that we're all facing, right? As working parents, what you need to have is that stakeholder engagement and coalition building. And I know Soma Action knows that I've worked with you all and with some of our other community and mutual aid groups on the ground, like Soma Justice and the Community Coalition on Race, to really do transformative things in our little town and our sister town of South Orange. Things that were really controversial and innovative, things that other communities have since embraced, and which have also pushed statewide policy, whether it was on racial justice and social justice, whether it was on creating first-time home ownership and sort of trying to get at the gap in home ownership and the gap in generational wealth, right, through the initiatives that CCR was doing to promote community policing. I ran on a civilian review board policy when I was first sort of getting involved in town after a terrific nationally publicized racial incident involving our youth after July 4th celebration. That wasn't easy to do. We had a lot of pushback from, as you would expect, our law enforcement union and from a lot of people in the community who had been part of the community for a really long time, who were very, very concerned that we were going way too far in building a board of everyday civilians who would have the right to review and comment on law enforcement in our town. And I'm pleased to report that through thoughtful stakeholder engagement, uh, diverse and inclusive stakeholder engagement, we were able to stand up a board that has completely transformed law enforcement in our town and our police department. Our police department really truly reflects our community right now. And they come to us, the board, that is. I've been serving as a liaison on the board all these years, and they say, "Oh my God, this is now the best thing that's happened to our department because we have access to data that informs our law enforcement, and we have access to training so that we can be more sensitive and inclusive in our law enforcement, and we are getting to connect with the residents whom we serve in a better way." So that's like one example. Another example I want to bring to the table is my state work. During the pandemic, I was able to stand up a statewide network of prevention in homelessness in a way that was never done before, as you may be aware, without getting too much in the weeds and going too long. But there are county by county continuums of care who are responsible for the federal dollars that get passed through the county for homelessness prevention. There's a lot of problems with how the system works, and I want to go to Washington and fix it because I have special expertise in this. But basically, the continuum of cares became their own fiefdoms. And each county started doing it their own way. Good old fashioned home turf. We're famous for that in New Jersey. And it became very, very difficult. There were silos, there was no communication, there was no partnerships, there were bureaucracies. And what that ended up doing is making prevention more difficult to effectuate. It meant increasing the harm on someone who was at risk experiencing homelessness to get help, right? They didn't know where to go. There were too many agencies. There was too much bureaucracy. I would go to Valerie for help. She would ask me the same 13 questions that Erica would then ask me, and I would get lost in the shuffle. Anyway, I was able, through stakeholder and coalition building, bringing everyone together to create a statewide network that really incentivizes partnership, breaks the silos, and removes the barriers to assistance, which included, by the way, removing barriers to citizenship that were there, and other barriers that hopefully we can talk about with some of your other questions, which is innovative. And that in turn has led to a recent innovation as well that I championed at the state, which is the 1115 Medicaid waiver. Medicaid pays for healthcare, as you know, assistance and social services support, but it never covered housing support. Well, healthcare and housing are related; they correlate, right? And so we've been really successful because we were able to bring all the continuum of cares together in this way to now cover housing support, which provides for a more wraparound comprehensive support for households experiencing risk. Sorry, I went long-winded there, but I wanted to give you a couple of concrete examples.
Thanks. Now, often in politics, donors, political bosses, and other people with power try to persuade you to prioritize their interests over those of your constituents. This could be by making you dependent on their money, having control over your career, or simply building relationships that make it hard to say no to your friends. What have you done, or will you do, to keep yourself free of those entanglements and protect against them unduly impacting your judgment?
It's a good question, and it's a big problem. We really need to overturn Citizens United. Let's go, day one. Because we got to get this kind of money out of politics. I've never run for Congress before. I've been involved and have run campaigns for statewide campaigns, obviously my own local campaigns, and I run statewide campaigns in New York City before I moved to New Jersey for state assembly and state senate races. The amount of money that's involved in this congressional race is truly immoral. It's criminal. We can do so much good with that amount of money. We've got to take out Citizens United. And we need to build the kinds of firewalls at the federal level that we have built here at the local level. There is a very strict no pay for play um, local ordinance that we have here in Maplewood, as does South Orange. A lot of municipalities do, actually. It gets a little bit dicier and loosey-goosey at the county level and at the state level, and we have far too much corruption for that reason. And we see that a lot of our legislators, because they're not fairly paid, also have to wear another hat or two, and that creates some conflicts of interest for them that are really, really real. I would stay grounded to the community. My campaign is about people over power. My campaign is about community investment over capital markets. And I would really fight for greater ethical standards and firewalls at the federal level that apply here locally, hyperlocal level in municipal governance, but do not apply at the federal level. And of course, Citizens United would really, really, it would be really, really important to get this kind of money out of politics so that people don't feel beholden to those big corporate donors. I'm proud to say that we're not accepting any corporate PAC money. And I know a lot of other campaigns rather, are using the grassroots slogan because that's like the slogan everybody wants to use to get votes. But seriously, Valerie, we're really grassroots. Let me tell you, we are being managed by an in-district minority-owned firm that's like basically comprised of 4 or 5 people. We still think we can win. We have a very viable path forward to victory in this crowded race, but we're doing it in a truly grassroots and inclusive manner. We're not working with a DC firm, and we're not working with lobbyists who have these amazing donor lists, who are all big corporate PAC and donors, who are going to compromise those potential Congress members down the road. It's just inevitable.
No one is perfect, but we are looking for leaders who create a culture that holds themselves and those around them to high standards. Standards of responsible and ethical public service. For any leadership position you've held, could you think back to times when you realized, ooh, there's a risk that I or my staff might be tempted to abuse power or behave unethically? What measures did you put in place to prevent that from happening? Or if somebody did slip up, what did you do to correct it as quickly as possible and make sure that it never happened again?
Yeah, that's a very good question. And it kind of is a carryover from the previous question, isn't it?
Mhm.
So I think our ethical standards are really important. We always talk about how do we bring back the 90 million Democrats, or let's just not talk about Democrats or Republican. How do we bring back voters who are just disenfranchised, disengaged, because they think that all politicians are corrupt? And certainly MAGA extremism and the Republicans of this current Republican Party have really stigmatized public service in a way that it's really, really difficult to actually stand up for good government. And even when we are being good and showing that government can be a powerful source of good in people's lives. And that's what government is about. It's not about making profit. It's not about capital markets. It's about a community investment. I'm proud of our doing what we've done here in Maplewood. And I say the same of my colleagues next door in our sister town of South Orange. We showcase every day that government is a powerful source of good in their everyday lives by actually delivering results for them. But yes, it is very easy to lose yourself in this sometimes, to lose your principles and to lose what uh, stand for, because compromise is needed to be made, because there was pressure politically, right? We can never separate, as much as we say ideally we want to separate the politics from the issues. The politics are always there. I'm proud to say that I have stood up against my own politics here in the community, and from Essex County, which is the most politically influential county in the state of New Jersey. And I've made no friends because of that. And while when I was the fresh new face, excuse me, I was very popular and I was in at every party and at every table invited by the political power brokers of Essex County. I lost a lot of that favoritism and I fell into an outer orbit because I didn't do what was expected politically. I did what I thought I needed to do for the best interests of community. And sometimes my activism and my advocacy got me in trouble because I inadvertently offended, unintentionally offended. And I had to step back, really understand, listen better, and apologize. Sometimes it's become a little bit of a joke that, oh, yeah, it's Dean Dafis. He says things and then he has to apologize for them. But I think our public servants should be accountable. And accountability also requires that you stand up and you apologize when you have offended. And I think that's really, really important. You've got to look back and you've got to learn and you've got to grow. And we should be sending people to Washington who have that kind of character and integrity.
Thank you. I am going to turn it over to Erica for the next batch of questions. Thank you, Dean.
Thank you, Valerie.
So our next set are some big picture questions. And for starters, our assumption is that we are in a time of attempted authoritarian takeover. Instead of politics as usual, we need to draw on the much deeper set of strategies that nonviolent civil resistance movements around the globe have used to reclaim their government when a ruler tries to insist that they get to do whatever they want with all the power and the money. First off, do you agree with this assessment? And if so, what do you think needs to happen to get us to a place where we have a healthy and functional democratic government?
Thanks, Erica. And you're such an expert. I've sat in on your educational seminars. I want to say they were very in depth on authoritarianism. It's not an assumption, it's a reality. We are living in an autocracy, and the Roberts Supreme Court seems to be okay with that. They're dismantling precedent, they're eroding our freedoms, and they're expanding presidential power that is allowing for greater autocracy. The checks and balances that our Constitution put into place, that our forefathers put into place, that the American Revolution was about, are eroding. And that's very dangerous. And it's important for us to do several things. First of all, to continue building our people power, our political movement against this autocracy. And certainly, we had amazing, inspirational, very powerful No Kings rallies across the country. And again, I could not have been prouder of what we did in our little town of 30,000 in Little Maplewood, what we did having as many thousands of people who showed up for our No Kings rally recently when we partnered together with Soma Action in doing that. Our people movements are working. As you said so yourself, Erica, in some of those meetings, statistically, it's showing that this works, that people are fired up, that we are getting people to stand up. And I think that shows that we can break MAGA, but we need to also have greater checks and balances. I would argue, not argue, but I would go to Washington, and one of the first priorities would be to start working on amending the Judiciary Act of 1869 to expand the Supreme Court. This is no longer an academic exercise. This is an emergency and a requirement. And no longer is it controversial. The 9 Supreme Court seats were created to reflect and to be in parity with the 9 federal circuits. We now have 13. So we need to, meet the moment and the current reality and add 4 more seats. And also put into place staggered terms and term limits so that this kind of ideological takeover doesn't happen again, and so that our checks and balances are not eroding. We also need to expand voting rights. The Freedom to Vote Act would make it easier to vote, automatic day registration, automatic at 18 years old. It would strengthen our voting security so that we don't have interference from Russia, or that we don't have MAGA extremists sending their people to audit our voting booths on before or after election day in the places where they want to cause interference and disenfranchise our voters. All those things together need to be happening in parallel, and it would be a big focus of mine. Again, my parents fled exactly what's happening right now in this incredible uh, nation of ours that was built and founded on principles of fairness, opportunity, and checks and balances. We really, really need to meet this moment.
And you've largely answered the follow-up question here, but what have you already done to promote having a functioning democracy? And what would your role as a representative be? So anything else you want to add?
Yeah, I mean, what I'll add is, so I'm not repeating myself, what I'll add is that, you know this, Eric, as well. I love this. I feel like, we know each other. We're having like a nice little conversation. This is great. We should do more of this. So, at the local level, we fought for fair ballots. The Maplewood Democratic Committee, which I'm a district leader, we fought to end the line. And before the line was ended countywide and statewide, we were able to do that here with our local Democratic Committee. Um, I've championed ranked choice voting. My goodness, is there a better example and reason for ranked choice voting than this special primary election with 13 candidates? How do you decide through plurality of one? It just doesn't make any sense. Ranked choice voting works, and I've championed that and introduced an ordinance in Maplewood, which was adopted by South Orange, encouraging us to use it at least for our school board elections, and to fight and to work with our to fight for it statewide, and to work with our legislators to adopt RCV statewide. And I know that there's a new bill that was introduced that strengthens a previous bill. So hopefully we'll get some traction with that with the new administration. So these are the kinds of pro-democracy, expanding voter rights that, I've personally been involved in as a public servant, and that I will continue looking to further implement and expand on.
Thank you. One of the reasons we think our country is so vulnerable to authoritarianism right now is that we've spent decades concentrating wealth in the hands of a few, while ordinary people become less and less able to meet their basic needs. And while you don't have the power to single-handedly change that, what do you think we should be working toward in terms of ensuring that everyone can meet their basic needs and wealth isn't too concentrated?
Yeah, we need to reverse this regressive tax code that Republicans have been building for decades now, way before MAGA. MAGA just exploited it even more and created the plutocracy that we have now. Wealth taken away from us, and given to large corporations. So we need to build a progressive tax code that makes the millionaires and billionaires and corporations pay their fair share, the way that we pay our fair share. We need to repeal the big so-called beautiful bill. I call it the big bad bill, which will promote greater affordability and redistribute wealth to working and middle class families. I think one of the things we need to do immediately is raise the federal minimum wage. The last time I think the federal minimum wage was raised was back in 2009 or something like that, maybe 2010. And I think we can get it to $17 by 2030 at the latest. That would affect millions of Americans and hundreds of thousands of New Jerseyans. And also something that we've seen in some very innovative cities across the country, even right here in our own backyard of Newark. Newark put into place a guaranteed minimum income pilot. And that is something that's been introduced at the federal level. Didn't really go far, but I would go back there, especially if we're able to get our majorities and push it through and not have to face a filibuster from the Senate, to guarantee so people living below the federal poverty uh, level would get some help to bring them up and to increase their mobility and opportunity. And those at the poverty level or those still in crisis would get stable, guaranteed minimum income to help their mobility. And it's been very, very successful. Newark has shown that that $1,000 that people were able to get, they really spent helped with their burden with their housing costs and living expenses. People used it responsibly, and it helped get them out of crisis, help them meet emergencies. And I would just want to throw out some statistics. This shocked me. Again, at the state level, I have access to federal policy and to federal studies and a lot of academic peer-reviewed statistics. So hear this. 10% of New Jersey lives below the federal poverty level. 29% of New Jersey statewide is what's called ALICE qualified, ALICE. That's asset limited, income constrained, though employed. These are people who are working, gainfully working, though living paycheck to paycheck. 29% of New Jersey. In Morris County, it's about 30%. When you dive deeper into the district, Morris County is about 30%. Essex is 48%, and Passaic is 50%. These are people living paycheck to paycheck. They're our neighbors. And I think we need to redistribute wealth and focus on affordability. One of the things that I would do immediately is reinstate fully 100% the SALT deduction. We are the highest taxpayers, property taxpayers in the nation. In this district in particular, we need to be able to get a better return on those tax dollars. I would reinstitute the SALT deduction back into a more progressive tax code. It's about to expire under the Trump administration. And I think that we need to reduce other living costs like our utility costs by going back and bringing back our offshore wind and solar. Cleaner energy is cheaper energy, and focusing on federal tax credits that will help us expand our grid to allow for greater cleaner energy. Again, the Trump administration completely dismantled all of those federal tax credits. We saw EVs popping up all over Maplewood and South Orange for a while there until Trump took office. And then suddenly you're not seeing that as much anymore because those tax credits are gone. And then housing. I know housing is my jam. I talk about housing because housing is at the center. It's housing first, as we say in the prevention landscape, because without housing, you can't do anything else. And housing is just becoming more and more unaffordable. Home ownership opportunity for young professionals returning into their suburban communities they grew up in is impossible. So they get stuck renting in luxury apartments, even those who are gainfully employed and make over 100K. But that rent that they're throwing away in luxury rentals, they won't be able to put toward a down payment. Affordable housing production needs to be completely rejiggered. It should not happen the way that it does, where we're basically favoring big bad developers, the big developers who want to come into our communities and put 100 units wherever they can find them in order to give us a 20% set aside, a 20%, 20 units that are affordable, that are subject to a national lottery, which means that you'll never be able to get into it even if you're eligible. We need to have HUD directly pay for these affordable units, which in turn would mean that we don't have to build as many, and that we can do things that are in keeping with the capacity, the context, and character of our communities. Affordable housing we need to do. It's the right thing to do, but it's stigmatized because of the way that it's currently being done. We need federal investment into this. And I would go to Washington to build that and build new committees focused on this in particular. Stop vilifying folks who are working poor. Stop vilifying affordable housing. Everyone accepts housing that's affordable when it's about seniors who need a place to age in place. right? And not have to move. Everyone accepts housing that's affordable for our teachers who want to live in the communities where they teach. Everyone accepts housing that's affordable when we're talking about our policemen and women and our firemen and women who want to be able to afford the community that they serve. Everyone accepts supportive housing for our special needs population, right? But for some reason, when we talk about affordable housing, people get turned off, and we have the NIMBYism come out, and it doesn't allow us to move forward in the progressive manner that we can. So those are some of the things that I would do. And then, of course, education, education, investing in education, Department of Education, and bringing back Title I funding into our schools. The biggest local expense that requires municipalities to drive up taxes, which makes communities in turn unaffordable and causes the crisis, is the lack of sufficient school budgets because of lack of state aid. Well, where does state aid come from? It comes from pass through federal aid, right? How do we pay for the things that our students need to narrow the achievement gap and to create for greater educational equity? How do we pay for the mental health services that we need to? We know our youth are facing serious mental health concerns due to social media and bullying. Well, who pays for caseworkers and mental health professionals in our schools? Title I funding. Let's bring that back into our schools so that school districts don't have to make hard choices like getting rid of these important critical safety nets for our students in order to balance their budgets, or municipalities don't have to raise taxes in order to be able for those programs to move forward. All of this relates to affordability. And education is really key and specific to NJ11 because we have some of the best public schools in our country. And we need to ensure the health and sustainability of those schools and our students who attend them.
So, throughout US history, one of the most potent weapons deployed to stop efforts to broadly distribute wealth has been stoking racism. Historically, this has included dividing and conquering rebellions against plantation owners, breaking union attempts to challenge factory owners, persuading municipalities to destroy public goods like pools rather than share them, and persuading ordinary people to cut their own healthcare and social safety nets as long as it means those people don't get any. What will you or your allies do to counter this dynamic when it gets deployed to try to block the goals you just talked about?
Yes. So I love this question because I have direct experience in this and personal experience. Again, the lived experience needs to go to Washington. Our representatives should reflect the struggles and the issues that we're talking about here today. They really should. So here at the local level, as you probably remember, one of the things that I championed along with my colleagues is going after our pool. We love our pool. It's a great asset, but the so-called community pool was really a private resort that was being subsidized by everyone, including those who could not afford to attend it. And that wasn't because necessarily Maplewood is racist, but rather because community pools were set up like this back in the day during redlining, and exactly to create this sort of like private resort experience for the few and not for all. And there's a lot of great books written about this in New York's history with public pools, and the transformation of community pools is a good educational history on this. So anyway, so we really fought hard to level the playing field, to make the pool more inclusive, to get rid of this idea that this is a separate utility, that it needs to be run on its own, but every improvement that's made to it and running the pool is always on the backs of everyone, including those who can't afford it. So we opened up the pool and made it a true community pool. And I've been my first volunteer experience in town when I first moved here 11 years ago was with the Community Coalition on Race. And it's great work through Carol Berry Austin, our dear beloved, in dear memory forever. Carol's work in intentional integration in our school district. No secret to any of you that our school district was very segregated, and we continue working on intentional integration to ensure that our schools reflect the entire community and that we're not steering um, incomers to certain neighborhoods, favoring one school over another. Um, and for me, my personal experience is my parents. I grew up in downtown Philly in those crowded row homes where immigrants could live, uh, with a lot of different immigrants, the melting pot of downtown Philly in the 70s and 80s. It was really rough. It was loud. We were all fighting for our standing and our dignity. And I can't tell you how many times I had to stand up for my parents, even during in physical alterations, because we were the other. We looked different. We spoke differently. We ate differently. Now, of course, Mediterranean cuisine is like the thing. I always tell people when I was 8 years old, I remember this vividly. Our next door neighbor called the cops on us because they said that we were roasting our dog in the backyard. We were roasting a lamb for Greek Easter, right? Now, lamb is part of the American diet. It's a staple, right? But and the police came and they were like, really rough with my parents, and we got this allegation, and so all of that stuff like really really colors you, and it has inspired my advocacy for justice in housing, racial justice, and social justice as well. Um, in my work at the state with social programs and housing assistance, as I mentioned earlier, I fought really hard to remove barriers to assistance, citizenship, immigration. When we look at the data of who's most disparately impacted by the housing crisis and the affordability crisis, it's Black and Brown folks in the most densely populated state in the country, where eviction and foreclosure are at a higher risk than the national standard by 3 times. So I will always fight against, this kind of vilification of Black and Brown people and of immigrants, and always fight for working immigrants like my parents. That's what my candidacy is all about. That's why I am running.
Another major barrier to progressive change has been the right wing exploiting people's fear of being harmed, particularly their fear of experiencing violence in their own home or community, to scare voters away from inclusive policies. And to counter this, we need to adequately address people's safety fears. What do you think works to keep people safe? And what do you see as the federal government's role in promoting that?
Community works. A well connected, integrated community fighting back is what works. Standing up is what works. Yes, they are fear mongering. That is how fascism takes over, by creating a boogeyman. Fear and intimidation and misinformation eh, are the ingredients of fascism. And that's what MAGA is all about and Trump administration is all about. So we need to fight back. Um, and what we've done here is by leaning in and being a sanctuary community. Way before sanctuary status was even designated by New Jersey, even New York didn't have it. We did it. We, as I said earlier, as an example of stakeholder engagement and turning policy and ideas into action in a collaborative manner, our community policing. We were able to bridge gaps in understanding and fear and isolation among different members of our community so that they feel seen and heard and able to participate in the policing of their own neighborhoods that they live in, where they pay taxes. And I think that that's what we need to continue doing. Um, and also, I would say that, we need to rejigger the culture, right? We need to have people who go to Congress not to just speak loudest on TikTok, not to be another talking head or personality on CNN and make a name for themselves, but to actually drive a new culture, an empathic one. Cory Booker talks about love, and I know he gets a lot of, he gets ridiculed for it, and it comes across as corny. But love, not as an emotion, but love as action, and creating a culture of empathy, and that having empathy for your neighbor and helping someone else out is not weakness. That is how the Third Reich did what it was able to do. And we know this. These are the tools that we've seen before that created fascism. And these are the same awful, tired, inhumane, misanthropic tools of fear, intimidation, misinformation that are being deployed again, to hope to create, to disengage communities, to break them, to put people inside, to be afraid to come out and engage and be part of community. And we have to fight against that. And it's a real concern. I tell you, as a food champion, I'm seeing that less people are coming to the fridge that I championed as well, put into place, because they're afraid to be outside, right? We're seeing less people at the state come and get help or ask for help, less willing to go through an intake process because they're afraid of being identified and their information being in some database. And it is really concerning because Doge turned over databases of information. And so we really need to go to Washington to fight against this, and build a whole new system. Rebuild our government and all the agencies that are really important in doing all this important work, and to build a culture of empathy and a culture of good government. Because government can be and should be the greatest source of good in people's everyday lives.
How do we counter attempts to use fear about safety to justify harm against immigrants, trans people, people of color, and other vulnerable groups?
I think that's what we just talked about, right?
You got a batch of it, but we asked the same follow-up questions for everybody. So yeah, just anything more you want to add.
I think, yeah, I just think that we need to, ensure we're being inclusive and bringing everyone to the table so that so we can create trust with those communities. We know, for instance, one of the things that I'm fighting against now from municipality to municipality is the municipalities that are leaning into this awful MAGA inspired, um, getting rid of homeless encampments, right? And basically dispossessing people from the parks or wherever they're living, and involuntarily incarcerating them. And I'm going to these municipalities, and I don't care if they're Democrats or Republicans, and some of them are Democrats, believe it or not, happening really next door, very close to us in NJ11. And I say, listen, this is not the way forward. We have data driven uh, ways of engaging with this population and building trust so that they know that there are services available to them so that we can get them to the services that they need. Mayor Adams in New York City spent $6.4 million over the course of 2 years to conduct 3,000 encampment raids. 3,000, and not a single one of those houseless persons was ever safely and permanently housed. And I'm proud of my work that I talked about earlier, which now we have a lot of data 4 years, 5 years after the pandemic. I have been able, with my colleagues, of course, it's a team effort. Nothing is I, it's always we. We have been able to be 90% effective, to 90% get people safe, permanent, and supportive housing. And that's what I would really focus on at the federal level as well.
Thank you. I'm going to pass it over to Valerie for our issue-specific areas.
Thank you. Um, So you've alluded to this, but could you tell us about times where you have supported immigrants even when doing so was risky?
Supporting immigrants. Yeah. Well, I'm doing it right now. Like I said, we were really successful at the state of New Jersey, and other states are looking to us to do the same in effectuating the 1115 waiver and in opening up eligibility and assistance to non-citizens, to the and underdocumented. That puts us in direct threat against this administration because this administration has said that in the second quarter of 2026, they're not only going to reduce assistance dollars by 44%, they're going to take a lot of people off the rolls, especially in states like New Jersey that directly defy them in this way. So we're doing it. And you know what we're doing? Through our attorney general partner, we're suing them. Um, that's what we got to do. Community building, justice, advocacy, and litigation using our legal tools. As a litigator, I understand that to fight back. And at least at the lower level, and even at the federal circuit level, the courts, we have been winning through injunctive relief. Those 44% cuts are on hold right now. HUD sent the continuum of care a very misanthropic quid pro quo um, notice a couple of weeks ago that said that your funding will be taken away if you don't do the kinds of things that Mayor Adams was doing in New York City that I just talked about. And we fought back and we organized and we went to Washington and we spoke up in different hearings. And there is litigation and we won injunctive relief. Those things, at least for now, are on hold. And if we can get more people like us in Washington to represent our communities, I think we can be successful in pushing back against this because a lot of this is about how far can will we allow them to go? We want to show that we're not going to allow them to go that far. My mom used to say to me, listen, listen, you teach people how to treat you. So stand up for yourself. We're going to stand up for immigrants. We're going to stand up for Black and brown folks, whoever they are, wherever they are. We're going to stand up for working poor. We're going to stand up for working middle class families. That's my life's work. We will continue doing that.
Dean, have you advocated for the Immigrant Trust Act at the state level?
I have, and we adopted an ordinance in Maplewood in support of and advocated with through our state reps and with Governor Murphy and Governor-elect Sherrill to adopt this as soon as possible. And I'd like to see a federal equivalent so that we can protect our immigrants in this way and we can remove this militarization in our communities and this abuse that's happening right now. And we're looking at what we can do here locally in Maplewood with our local law enforcement to better define their role in situations of ICE raids to see if we can force identification and notice, at the local level. So that everyone, it goes back to the public safety thing that Erica asked about, so that the community better understands the public safety aspect of this. Like, what can we expect from MPD in a situation like this? How can we guarantee that people who show up to protest are going to be kept safe? How do we guarantee de-escalation? And so I would work at the federal level on this as well. But yes, I support the Immigrant Trust Act. I'm disappointed that Governor-elect Sherrill has yet to, show her support and speak out unequivocally about this. It was a sore point, as a surrogate for her campaign during the campaign. But hopefully she will get there, and we will continue fighting in Trenton for that.
Could you tell us about times when you have supported trans and LGBTQIA plus people, even when doing so was risky?
Yeah. So, you know, so in case you didn't know, I'm a gay person and I've been an LGBTQIA plus advocate for many, many years. I started out on conversion therapy bans as a survivor. I, submitted myself and told my personal story uh, before medical panels at the time. And, we got bans done in New York and in New Jersey because of that. I was a marriage equality advocate. And in recent years, I've become a trans rights advocate. Trans rights are human rights. My two nephews are trans. I understand it really well. The issue that they're facing, their transphobia is what homophobia was for people like me in the 70s and 80s. We remember what it was like to be ostracized, to not have legal standing, to be beat up. I've been beat up. I've been arrested. Um, like I said, through conversion therapy, I was electrocuted. It doesn't erase us, it just makes us stronger. I'm lucky to be alive and to tell my story. I find it's my duty to do what I can for the rest of the LGBTQIA community, because an attack against one of us is an attack against all of us, right? So we have, again, with Soma Action and local advocates, we have a couple of great trans advocates in our community. I've become better informed through them, through my nephews and their lived experience. I've become better informed through them. We've recognized visibility and remembrance, Trans Day of Visibility and Remembrance. We celebrate all those things. We create safe spaces. We go out into the school district and make sure that our students who are sort of maybe struggling quietly know that there is help, that we are going to be visible for them, and that our visibility and representation creates a safe space for them. I'll just say also that we help a lot of students who identify as trans or non-binary find their way to services, again, in partnership with local groups. And that's done sort of underground and in a discreet and appropriate manner. And we help educate parents of trans kids who may not, who love their kids, but they're not quite affirming them in the way that they need to be affirmed. And of course, I'm a big advocate for and have been, we testified yesterday during the People's Agenda in defense of the gender affirming bill. Listen, that should not be controversial. It makes no sense why it's controversial. We all receive gender affirming care. As a woman, Valerie, you want to receive gender affirming care, right? As a man, I want to do the same. It applies across the board, including to our trans brothers and sisters. The only reason why this is an issue is because of the culture war that I talked about before. The boogeyman is the trans person. The vilification of our trans brothers and sisters. And we need to stop being a political liability. And I wish, frankly, that Democrats in Trenton would speak up about this. We have a majority in Trenton in both houses, a big majority, and they should be leaning into this, and they're not. And again, I was less than 100% happy that Governor-elect Cheryl, during her campaign, she's always been an ally for the LGBTQ community. But there were some opportunities for her to lean in more into our trans community and better understand their issues and go to Trenton to advocate for that. But we do think that we're going to have an open door with her, and you betcha I'm going to be there. I'm going to be there as a Congress member. I'm going to be there if I continue being a municipal member. I'm going to be there fighting for my nephews and for everyone else in the trans community.
Yeah. Could you give examples of when you have prioritized climate action, even though there were competing priorities?
Sure. I have a great example of this. And I also want to say, just on the previous topic, it was important for me as an elected official to ensure that our employees are being trained properly, receiving up-to-date training on racial bias and on LGBTQIA sensitivity. So recently we did a few trainings that were specific to trans and non-binary rights and affirmation. And that was something that I pursued, and I just wanted you to know about that as specific to standing up for. And of course, the Office of LGBTQ Affairs at the county, which I championed along with my fellow members of the LGBTQ Advisory Board of Essex County. We actually wrote the proposal that was submitted to the county executive. We nudged the county executive painstakingly, and we did the recruitment for that office. And that office is really opening the door for other inclusive such offices around the state, even in places where we didn't expect that to be the case. So that's a big win for our community. Okay, so climate action. Plastic bags. Let's talk about plastic bags, Valerie. As you can imagine, we got a lot of flack for banning plastic bags. There's so many issues to focus on. Stormwater management, the planet is dying, solar, wind. Give me a break, Dafis. Give me a break. You're focusing on plastic bags. Well, I'm here to tell you that we found that was really important. We worked again with members of the community who were experts, academics, and others who had data that showed that this can, even at the hyperlocal level, have a direct impact on climate. And we worked really hard, and it took a long time, and not everybody believed in it, and we got laughed at. And changing culture and behavior of how people shop to remember to bring a reusable bag, is a thing, and it takes time. But through diverse and inclusive stakeholder engagement and lots of working groups, we were able to put that into action against other, as you said, competing needs. We have competing needs. It'd be great if we can do them all the time in parallel. But plastic bags, we felt, were a low-hanging fruit that in turn had a direct impact. And look at what has happened. The state adopted our local ordinance here. One of our great state reps, who used to be our state rep before we were redistricted, as we currently are at the state level in LD 28, is John McKeon. And John McKeon basically was like, "Oh my God, this is great! You guys did all the hard work. We're going to take this forward in Trenton." And Trenton moved it forward, and Governor Murphy signed it. So that is one small thing, but all of these things add up to reducing our carbon footprint. One of the things that I'm known for in municipal government in terms of my committee assignments is I'm the person who's chaired code. Code is not very sexy to most people because it's basically land use and zoning. But land use and zoning is really, really important in how we live and what our neighborhoods look like. It's a very powerful tool. Redevelopment, development, what kind of requirements we put on our small businesses that try to come in here and make it work. How we build, where we build, the consequences, all of these things are really, really critical and affect all of us in one way or another. And one of the things that, we championed is making sure that we eliminated parking minimums in certain redevelopment so that we're not focusing on cars, we're focusing on pedestrians, right? If we build everything for cars, then it's all going to be about cars. And where we need to have cars, focusing on EV and putting a required EV inclusion in new developments that are proposed to us. And in, I lost my train of thought. Yeah, the EV. Oh, and converting our municipal fleet, whether it's our police cars, our DPW trucks, slowly converting them. Our jitney is slowly being converted into electric. Again, is this going to save the planet on its own? No, but it will. It does add up, and if we can show other municipalities that we're doing, it does add up. And I want to add something. I know I'm going long, but I think it's important because some people out there, when they read this later, they're going to be like, yeah, right. So, and we were the second town in New Jersey to put into place a stormwater utility because we recognize that stormwater is a concern because of climate change, and we need to be planning ahead. We're actually behind with climate change. It's the greatest existential threat, but we need to be planning ahead and be able to pay for stormwater management improvements that are very, very costly. So we put the utility in place, and we know that really well in Maplewood. After Ida, we suffered devastating losses here, including personal loss. I lost a friend and neighbor across the street who lost his life, and you can read more about that. I'm a big climate advocate. I'm on different boards. When I was a mayor, I continue supporting different initiatives. But I know that I was downgraded by Soma Action and others, rightfully so, for my support of turf. So I just want to clear the record, all right? Because we got to learn from our public service. The way that we went about turfing DeHart was wrong. It wasn't transparent. Good government needs to be transparent. It didn't involve community collaboration or input. It was a rush to judgment, and it was wrong. And it created a public referendum, which became divisive, which I further added to the divisiveness with my public comments at the time, which were ill-informed. And I apologized for recognizing that it didn't really help anything. We divided the community, and that was wrong. I do support the Ritter Field turf, which is the new turf sort of debate that we engaged in the community here in Maplewood and South Orange, because that athletic field is a smaller footprint, because it's not the only park that's available. Because I think, as you asked earlier, how do you balance competing interests? Because I think that our athletes have been historically underserved. Um, and basically what we have is parents who can afford to take their athlete children to greater fields, they can. And those kids get greater educational opportunities and athletic opportunities because of it. It creates an inequity. We should be able to manage something here, but to do it in a collaborative way, with a lot of community input. And this time around, I think that's happening, to make sure we can pay for it, and to make sure that we're accounting for all unintended consequences, stormwater runoff, and so on and so forth. So this time around, I think I'm doing a better job of trying to balance the interests than I was doing before. But I just wanted to mention that in all transparency.
Thank you. Now you've addressed this, but we'll see if there's anything you need to add. How have you prioritized diversity, equity, and inclusion in your own organizations and more broadly, even while it's been under attack?
Yeah, I mean, I was always the equity candidate when I came here and tried to run for office. I was the first out open LGBTQ elected, the first mayor, one of the first in the county, very among few in the state. And I've used that platform to do the same for others, not just like me, but for other marginalized communities, to build our bench and to make sure that there are more people included at the table. And where that table is not the right table to be at, to build a new table, because it's not enough to be at the table. If it's the same table making the same decision, it's not good enough just to have someone there to check the box. So, and this campaign, my congressional campaign, is historic. If elected, I would be the first out LGBTQ member of Congress from New Jersey. And I think that's really, really important right now. As I said earlier, we are under attack as a community directly. And while we as a community have the same affordability issues and housing concerns and living cost concerns and inequities that intersect all of our identities, we're the ones on the ballot every election. Our human dignity and our rights are on the docket with every Supreme Court term. And we have become, as I said, when we were talking about being inclusive and fighting for trans rights or human rights, we become a political liability. And I go in some rooms, even I, after all of this work, I go into some communities And I feel like I need to tone it down, not talk about that. I was at a forum this weekend in a crowd where I felt like I couldn't talk about that as part of my campaign, even among Democrats. And so that's never going to change. Oh, and by the way, the LGBTQ community under federal law is still second class citizens. We don't have full equality under the Civil Rights Act. So that's never going to change unless one of us is down there making that change.
What do you support doing to make healthcare accessible and affordable for everyone, including vaccines, contraception, abortion care, and gender affirming care?
Absolutely. Supported gender affirming care, reproductive care and rights. And, I would say that the ACA has shown the success of the ACA has shown us that we need to go to the next step now, Medicare for all. We need to build a public option. This is no longer a controversial thing. And this is no longer something that we can't do. We should be able to do it and not just rely on exchanges whose subsidies may or may not lapse, depending on administration, depending on the culture wars and the politics. We need Medicare for all. We need one risk pool, and not to get too healthcare specific, but like we need one plan. Why don't we put all public employees, school, municipal, law enforcement, fire, you put them all into one plan. What does that do? It guarantees quality level of care for everyone, and it drives down costs. And the number one, as a local elected, the number one municipal, the number one thing that affects our budgets every year is how to pay for healthcare. We're always subject anywhere to 20 to 30% upticks in healthcare. Why is that? It shouldn't be the case. And in New Jersey, we have Horizon Blue Cross Blue Shield. Well, why do I mention Horizon? Because Horizon, the state of New Jersey created Horizon as a public corporation. Well, guess what? I want to go to Washington and say, listen, your Medicare dollars that you get, your Medicaid dollars that go into Horizon, I'm going to condition them on your creating one risk pool, one plan for all public employees. And that's how we do it. I also think that we need to go to Washington and restore funding to the NIH, which this hateful administration has taken away. That affects research. And it affects vaccines, as you said, Valerie, and access to services that a lot of folks depend on. This is really New Jersey 11 specific. We have biotech firms in our backyards. Somerset has J&J. We have Novartis. Novartis is at the forefront of gene and cell therapy, innovation, and manufacturing. It's the future of medicine. It's the future of medicine. And that research is critical research is now being threatened by these terrible initiatives and by these terrible policies from the MAGA administration. We need to restore that funding and bring it back. And I would also go to the Department of Labor, it's not healthcare, and fight for workforce grants for jobs at Novartis, which don't require a college degree, so that those jobs stay in our communities, which in turn stay in our communities and not go to Texas or down south. Because these biotech companies, yes, they're big pharma, but they are fueling our local small businesses. The people who work there shop locally, they go to lunch, they go to dinner at the local coda, right? So we need to ensure their success by bringing back funding into NIH and protecting vaccines. And I saw Senator Kim yesterday introduced a Vaccine Protection Act. You betcha that I would support that. And not get us back to the public health emergencies of the past. And let me just talk about public health. You can ask our public health officer this question. You can corroborate some of the things that I'm saying if you're going to do that later. I've been a big public health advocate. Before the pandemic, because of municipal budget stresses, some of my colleagues were considering getting rid of our local health department in the way other municipalities felt that they needed to do and to rely on a county-based health department, services from the county. I fought hard against that. And what I did was ensure that we invested and expanded and increased our public health department to create direct social services, not rely on the county or some outside vendor, to to um, basically um, help the healthcare of our communities. We have Haitian members of our community that are not fully insured, who rely on our local health department for vaccines, for checkups, for preventative care, right? We work with the county and their mobile van to do that too, but it is our local health department that is driving that. And I went further and I put into place an ordinance that requires public health to be at the center of all of our decision making. So whether we're talking about recreation or development or law enforcement, whatever it is, the public health is centered because public health is everything. We all need healthcare. We're all aging every single day. I'm aging you with all this talking I'm doing right now. So public health is really, really important. I'd be a strong public health advocate in Washington.
So as we wrap up, is there anything else you'd like to mention that you haven't covered?
I think I said a lot. I think I've covered and answered most of the questions. I would just end with this. I want to thank you for the opportunity. This is what democracy looks like. Creating this transparent process, allowing all of us to talk about our vision, give you a little bit of our bio and what inspires us in this moment and why we're running. I would say that I urge those who listen to this and watch this later, let's take advantage of this critical moment to send new voices to Washington who are really going to fight the good fight. Let's not send another middle of the road Democrat, someone who is a fighter, who has been fighting, someone with lived experience in the struggle and the hustle of everyday New Jerseyans, someone like me. And let's take advantage of this generational opportunity to finally make history by electing New Jersey's first out LGBTQ member of Congress. Thank you.
Thank you so much for joining us and for sharing your vision for New Jersey's 11th Congressional District. On behalf of everyone at Soma Action, thank you so much.
Thank you both. Have a nice day.
You too.